China's invasion of America. The first wave? Hello everyone, Dan Mason here. Let's explore another issue in our current events together. China's move on America. What are they up to? Introduction. A quiet morning broke over the New York tri-state area on September 22, 2025. Abandoned buildings stood silent, their windows dark. Inside, hidden servers hummed with power. Agents moved fast, driven by a tip. They uncovered a web of 100,000 SIM cards and 300 servers, all 35 miles from United Nations headquarters. The find came hours before President Trump's address. Tension filled the air as the truth emerged. Covert hands had built a tool to disrupt America's lifeline. The sun dipped low as Agent Maria Delgado led her team through a crumbling warehouse in Queens. Dust coated the air. She signaled silence, her flashlight cutting through shadows. Racks of black servers glowed faintly, their blue lights blinking like eyes. Beside them, stacks of SIM cards gleamed under her beam, 100,000 in all. "Check the logs," she whispered. Her partner, Tom Hayes, tapped out a message on the keyboard. Data scrolled fast. 30 million texts per minute, he said. Enough to choke cell towers. Maria's jaw tightened. This wasn't a petty crime. Outside, the UN building loomed 35 miles away. Trump's speech loomed closer to dawn. A call crackled through her radio. "Swatting hits this spring tide here," the voice said. 3 officials targeted. Maria pictured armed teams storming homes, all from fake 911 calls traced to this spot. She moved deeper. A glint caught her eye. Cocaine, 80 grams, sat in a bag. Guns lay scattered, pistols and a rifle. "Cartel markers," Tom muttered. But something bigger stirred. Intel hinted at China's Ministry of State Security. The scale screamed state cash. Millions in gear. Back at headquarters, analysts pored over evidence. Screens showed network maps. "They could have jammed 911 during the UN event," one said. Maria nodded. The team worked with Homeland Security and the NYPD. No arrests have been made yet, but the threat feels real. The night wore on. Trump spoke at dawn, unharmed. The farm sat offline, its power cut. Maria stared at the seized hall. Hybrid warfare, she thought. Spying, disruption, chaos, all without a shot. The U.S. would tighten SIM rules. She knew the fight had just begun. The U.S. Secret Service seized over 300 servers and 100,000 SIM cards from 5 sites in the New York tri-state area. Agents discovered the gear in abandoned buildings within a 35-mile radius of the United Nations headquarters. The bust happened on September 22, 2025. That put it just hours ahead of President Trump's address to the General Assembly on September 23rd. Investigators traced the setup to swatting calls against 3 senior officials this spring. Swatting means fake emergency reports that send armed teams to a target. The SIM farm allows callers to spoof numbers and remain anonymous. It could blast 30 million texts per minute. That volume might jam cell towers, block 911 lines, and crash service across New York City. Early forensics point to foreign actors. Officials spotted links to at least one unnamed nation and U.S.-tracked criminals like cartel members. No public charges yet. The probe continues with help from Homeland Security, the Justice Department, and New York police. Agents also grabbed 80 grams of cocaine and illegal guns at the sites. China's Ministry of State Security shows up in some reports. One analysis ties the operation to Beijing's cyber units. Experts note the scale screams state funding, millions in hardware alone, but official statements stay vague on the culprits. They stress the threat felt imminent to protective ops during the UN gathering. This counts as hybrid warfare. Nations use tools like SIM farms to disrupt without firing shots. The setup could spy on talks, flood networks during chaos, or aid physical attacks by cutting comms. It fits patterns from Chinese ops against U.S. infrastructure. Consider power grids or ports that are hit by hacks. Does it qualify as war? Not. In the classic sense, no invasion or bombs. War demands the use of armed force under international law, as outlined in the Geneva Conventions. But acts like this erode defenses and signal intent. Congress might label it an attack if ties harden. Past cases, such as Russia's election meddling, sparked sanctions but no declaration. Here, the U.S. response leans toward quiet takedowns and intel sharing. Expect tighter SIM tracking and cyber drills to be implemented soon. The farm now sits offline. No disruptions hit the UN event. Trump spoke without issue. Still, the find spotlights gaps in telecom security. Bulk SIM buys need better oversight. Foreign students or firms might route gear through proxies. 600,000 Chinese students study here yearly, some flagged for spying. Bottom line, this was a close call. It demands action, not panic. Bolster networks and call out sponsors. If China were to run it, it would hit back with tariffs or asset freezes. America stays vigilant. What the public reporting says, what we know, or strongly believe, the U.S. Secret Service announced that it discovered and dismantled a network of telecommunications devices, so-called SIM farms, in the New York tri-state area, concentrated within 35 miles of the UN headquarters. The seizure included over 300 servers and about 100,000 SIM cards at multiple sites. The Secret Service described the network as posing imminent threats to U.S. government officials' communications and protective operations, including the potential to disable cell towers, overload networks via denial of service (DOS) attacks, and facilitate anonymous encrypted communications among threat actors. Investigators believe some communication over the network linked foreign actors and individuals already known to U.S. law enforcement. Officials also stated that swatting threats and other telecom-based attacks against U.S. officials partially sparked the investigation. Some media reports tied those swatting cases back to operations using SIM farms. Subsequently, agents in New Jersey discovered an additional 200,000 SIM cards linked to the same broader network. The investigation is still ongoing. No confirmed arrests have been publicly announced yet. Some cybersecurity experts express skepticism about whether such a network could truly cripple modern cellular infrastructure as claimed. They argue that modern telecom systems have mitigations and that the more plausible use cases are large-scale fraud, anonymous communications, or targeted disruption, not a full blackout. So, while the threat is serious, experts caution that disabling 5G across NYC would be a very high bar in practice. Is this an act of war? Labeling something an act of war is not a straightforward process. Here is how one might parse it. Arguments in favor. 1. State-level attribution potential. Suppose the network is proven to have been organized, funded, or directed by a foreign government, e.g., China's Ministry of State Security. In that case, it becomes more than a criminal act. It could be a covert, hostile action. 2. Intent to disrupt critical infrastructure. Telecommunications systems are a vital part of the national infrastructure. A plot timed around the UN Assembly suggests a strategic aim. 3. Threat to national security and sovereignty. If a foreign power can threaten to paralyze communications in New York, and perhaps beyond, it undermines U.S. security. Arguments against or caveats. 1. Lack of public confirmation of state sponsorship. While some reports mention China-linked or China actors, I haven't seen publicly released definitive evidence, as of current reporting, that ties the operation to a state actor. 2. Ambiguity of damage or execution. It's not clear whether the network was capable of fully executing on all the claims, e.g., total blackout. Some experts regard the threat claims as exaggerated. 3. Preemptive disruption by U.S. authorities. The network was seized before any significant damage was publicly evident. The plot was disrupted before it could come to full fruition. 4. Threshold for war. Acts of war traditionally involve kinetic military force, territory invasion, or explicit aggression. Cyber operations, and especially hybrid conflicts, occupy a gray zone under international law. Given those, I would lean toward not yet proven to be an act of war, but it definitely qualifies as a serious hostile intelligence or hybrid warfare operation. In the coming weeks or months, the key things to watch: whether investigators publicly attribute the network to a foreign government, with evidence. The investigation will determine whether additional attacks or follow-on operations occur in other U.S. cities, whether the U.S. responds with countermeasures, diplomatic, cyber, sanctions, or even defensive cyber operations. The question is whether Congress or the executive branch reclassifies acts like this, mass telecom disruption, as an act of war or triggers war powers. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment to support this channel.